India, China, Africa and Brazil in partnership with the Festival Foundation. And my colleague Anastasia, who is sitting over here, and I will be making this presentation. But at the same time, a lot of work that has been done under this project in India has been done by a huge team from the Columbia Water Center, headed by Professor Narula and Professor Vijay. Now, the outline of this presentation is that we would be starting with a macro view on the water and agriculture connect in India. Then moving on to the key drivers that actually try to define the unsustainability aspect or how sustainability is got limited in those conditions. Then we move on to giving a micro view of the two sides that we are working on much more in depth. And then of course the proposed solutions and the future steps that we have in mind. So starting with the macro view of water agriculture connect. Now India supports 1/6 of the world population, 1/25 of the world water resources, and 1/50 of the world's land. The point here to make is that under rising demands and limited availability of land, as well as limited availability of storages, the pressures on the water that's available for any use, any economic use, are huge. Now this can be seen from the point of view of the water that is available on per capita basis is 1/5 or 1/6 of the world average, which in India it is around 1100 cubic meters per capita per year. Agriculture is the major consumer of water. More than 85% of the demand comes from the agriculture sector. At the same time, agriculture sector plays a dominant role in the Indian economy. It's a major contributor to the national GDP. It also employs more than 2/3 of the total workforce. It is a major contributor to the exports in the world. Now, if you look at the world rankings, just a snapshot at it, one can actually see that Indian agriculture has first and second ranks in a lot of cereal crops that it grows. Now, coming on to the major input to the land phase of the hydrological cycle. What this tries to show is that the areas in India that are experiencing less rainfall are also the areas that are experiencing high variability in the rainfall. Now, the coefficient of variation, this is explained in terms of standard deviation in a simple way over here, but the coefficient of variations that we are actually looking at are greater than 40%. Now, these are the regions that you can see along the western side, along the northwestern side, and along the southern portions of the country. Now, in some of these areas, especially on the western side, the drought happens very frequently, almost once in every 3 years. On the other hand, you have relatively well off the eastern side, eastern areas, which actually experience floods every second year. Now, the question is that with this variability in the input and less storage infrastructure available, the point is that the usage or the interannual variability exacerbates aridity, and the dependency on surface runoff systems reduces a lot. In other words, the dependency on groundwater systems has increased a lot. And this is what you find from this particular picture, which shows that the areas in the north, shown in red over there, all those light green, yellow, mustard and red portions which are there in the west, along the northwest and in the south, have actually moved down for the last 2 decades to groundwater systems of irrigation. Because of greater control on irrigation, its timing, reliability of supplies, as well as better quality of water. Now, all that it says is that in these areas which are on a relative scale, which have less water available, are also facing huge amount of groundwater exploitation. The water levels over here are declining at a rate of something like 3 meters per year on the western side. On the northwestern side, they are declining at the rate of 1 meter per year. So we are talking about a real stress situation, an alarming situation over here. Now here comes in the role of energy. Now when we talk about groundwater use, We are actually not talking of groundwater use per se, but we are actually talking about electricity use over here. Now with these high rates of declining tables, where the water levels, for example in the west, have already gone down to 300 meters, well below the mean sea levels, the point is that you need huge amount of energies to pump out this water. Now this also leads to a very important observation that we made when we were doing this study, is that when these regions are supposed to be the food baskets of the country, now these regions have less amount of surface water, these regions have less amount of infrastructure investments in terms of storages, these regions are groundwater exploited regions, these regions are also using energy to the max. The point is, how is irrigation happening in this region? Why are we irrigating in this region? What's driving irrigation in this region? It's certainly not water endowments. If it would have been water endowments, you would have thought about a different flow as we are seeing over here, or perhaps a reverse flow. And this brings in the element of, another interesting element of virtual water flows. Now all these water stressed areas that we saw along the north and along the west are actually also the major exporters of the commodities that require huge amount of water inputs in their preparation, the agricultural rice, for example. Now these are the major exporters of rice, not only in the domestic market, but also in the global markets. And this raises the question that what's driving these? It's not water, certainly. It's not hydrology that we talk about. It's not the groundwater stuff that we're talking about, all the aquifers that we did intensive modeling of the hydrological cycle as well as the groundwater aquifer cycle, and we actually came to the conclusion, no, this is not the thing that actually is the limiting factor over here. So what's driving is the government policies. What's driving is the land fragmentation, the land use per capita that is there. Very less land is available on per capita basis. What's also driving is the fact that lack of infrastructure investments have been reduced. So all that you can say is that water-rich eastern portions that are not able to grow rice or export rice to the extent that they should be, they are into a vicious cycle of poverty trap. And on the other hand, you have these regions in the north, which is like Punjab, the major exporter and the major grower of rice. Over there, the income levels are very huge. But at the same time, the question is, are these sustainable? Now, in order to understand these flows, in order to understand at the macro level, let's have a look at those two sides that we are working on in much more detail. But the key drivers that we have tried to list is that subsidies. Now, subsidies are crowding out productivity enhancement investments. Now, we are talking about subsidies in the electricity sector. We are talking about huge subsidies in the fertilizer sector, in the micro irrigation sector. And look at the percentages of these subsidies. We are talking about a subsidy to the extent of 90% coming from the government to the farmers. And if you ask the farmers that would they like to put in an extra 5% or extra 10% on their own, the answer is not willing, and they wouldn't like to. They would like the government to take care of all the things, because this has been traditionally going on in these regions. Other element is support price. The minimum support price that the government offers to procure the rice and wheat from Punjab. The rice is a major consumer. We all know rice is a major consumer. Flood irrigation systems, 1100 millimeters and more of water required to produce rice. Now, government offers a minimum support price, and they are the major buyers of this particular rice. Now, what has in turn happened is, because of this rice wheat cultivation that has been going on traditionally over the last 2 decades, the water tables have shown a decline on one hand, but at the same time, the farmers have lost the ability to move away to any other cropping systems, move away to any other cropping systems. They want to just grow rice and wheat.